I am a free speech advocate, which means that I will fight for your right to be an idiot as much as my right to be an idiot, right? I will fight for your right to be wrong as much as I fight for mine to be wrong. And when it comes to gatekeeping, quote unquote, gatekeeping conversations, I don't believe in it. I don't believe that some people should not be able to speak on issues outside of their own ethnicity or their gender, etc. As a matter of fact, I think that's used as a means of evading accountability or even taking in information. It's a sense of pride that says, I can't listen to you. It's like what some parents do to their kids. You're a child, you're the child, therefore you can't tell me a damn thing. And so they can't even learn from somebody because they're simply their child and nothing less to them. And so, when it comes to issues of race and systemic racism and all these other ideas, I call them what they are, ideas. Some like to call them facts and irrefutable aspects of society, and others will see it as an idea, right? Which doesn't necessarily mean it is fully accurate at giving the full picture. But nevertheless, when it comes to these things, I think anybody should be able to have the discussion. And so I want to get into this debate that Charlie Kirk, my guy Charlie, has been going off the whole election cycle. This man is a huge part of the reason why Gen Z was exposed to facts over feelings. So let's get into this debate, if we could even call it so. Usually when he comes to debate these individuals, it's just, again, it's a sermon. The man is preaching. So let's get into it.
But don't you think that there's a reason that a lot of the black community doesn't have a father, and it's because of systemic racism. It's because black men are more likely to be in prison.
Oh yeah, so why do people go to prison?
For a lot of the time it's because they're in.
I don't know if he's going to get into this or not, but fatherless households, the system that was put into place was incentives by the Democratic wing of the government, i.e. The social welfare reforms that were put into place by the likes of Lyndon Baines Johnson, who was forced to sign the Civil Rights Act after JFK's assassination, forced to sign the Civil Rights Act because of the majority House and Senate who are Republicans, about 92 percentile, who pushed the bill through. And it was filibustered, i.e. it was stalled by the Democrats in the House and the Senate. But I digress. Single father household or single mother households, fatherless homes were a byproduct of the disincentivizing and the reliance upon government that black folk started to adopt after integration, so-called integration. That's why Martin Luther King's last words, or at least last public speech, were, "I'm afraid that I have led my people into a burning building." He saw where things were about to go. And I think he saw something in the eyes of that dude, Lyndon Baines Johnson, and said, oh, hell. This man is selling black folk on freedom wrapped up in welfare reform when he's really incentivizing the families to break up. Mind you, before that, black people have been the most wedded out of every demographic, about 85 percentile of mother and father in the household, and they were thriving within their environments, in spite of what was going on at the time in some of the country, those democratic portions of the country that were pushing Jim Crow.
Poverty, and they have no other way to get.
Okay, so they commit crimes
Because
Yeah, but so wait. So wait.
So why do they?
So wait, if you're
commit crimes?
So in poverty, we should give excuses for committing crimes.
Yes, because if they have no
murder.
I did not say murder.
She must live in California because that's a state that has been okay with just letting crime be. And I live in Cali, about to move. I've got myself into a redder part of Cali, a small little town, but spent a majority of my life thus far in the Bay Area and saw the place turn into a literal dumpster fire. They allow crime to run rampant, and thankfully we just passed some bills because we're tired of Gavin Newsom. We're tired.
I did not say murder. I'm saying if someone is stealing something because they have no money and there's no jobs.
That's so interesting. So you think most crimes are crimes of necessity in the black community?
I'm not saying most.
So gangbanging is a crime of necessity?
That I literally never said that. I'm saying
But you're making an argument of crimes of necessity. They're so hungry they can't handle it.
I'm talking about crime that has to do with getting food, getting stuff that you need to live.
Right, but we have food stamps for anyone that needs it. So that doesn't exist. We have subsidized housing for anyone that needs it, so that doesn't exist. We have free health care for any poor person that wants it, called Medicaid, that doesn't exist. We also have welfare, cash, for anyone that wants it, so that doesn't exist. So what?
This is the problem when you you live in these silos. Again, we all live in some level of an echo chamber. But when you live in a silo where the truth is not enforced and you never have to engage with it ever, not in your outside world, let alone your inner world on your phone or whatever else device you may be using to get your information, you find yourself in a place where your arguments are so weak, right? You've never fully been exposed. Like, she doesn't even understand, let's say, the welfare system, or that there are social, there are certain social initiatives that are already there existing. All she can see is through the lens of there's this thing called racism, and that's the reason why black people are suffering. Not even understanding how racist that perspective is, how racist that far leftist, white, liberal mindset is to say black people cannot do anything without our help. Black people will suffer if it's not for us white people who have such privileges that they surely need us. They can't see outside that lens and to see that that is the very thing that suppresses the people they purport to help.
So what is it they're missing that they need to go? Sorry about that.
Well, the food, like a lot of food stamps might not cover all of what they need, and also housing is like there's not unlimited housing. A lot of people who are unhoused have to like go to shelters, and then they get kicked out of shelters because there's a mandatory stay limit. So it's not like you just get a house.
It's not a stuff thing, though, right? It's like if you need stuff, there's also tons of charities out there that can provide assistance, churches. You will not go hungry in this country. You will not starve in this country.
Yes, you will. There's
no, we have an obesity problem.
Street?
We have an obesity problem, not a starvation problem in this country.
What are you talking about?
In State Street, if any one of those people went to the local Episcopalian church or Methodist church, they will get fed. I guarantee it. If they go to a local...
And I was born in Zimbabwe, and, like these quote-unquote third world nations, underdeveloped nations, people are dying of starvation because the resources aren't there. There aren't just stores. There aren't just locations, food banks, and soup lines and things of that nature where you can go and get fed. And he's absolutely right. It's not to say nobody's ever died. Well, he's saying that nobody's ever died of starvation. He's not saying that. He's saying in this country, the biggest problem, even especially in the poorest populations, it's actually obesity. It's overfed or, fed upon the wrong things, upon a non-nutrient dense foods. That is the biggest issue. It's not the opposite. That's not the epidemic. The epidemic here is not starvation. You would know if that was the epidemic. So again, I get where she's coming from. It seems like a good nature argument, which I appreciate. It's just underinformed, misinformed on one side, but very underinformed on another side.
Local food shelter, they will get fed.
Okay, but I'm talking, housing.
For housing. If we have Section 8 subsidized housing in this country, right? If you want to have a roof over your head, you can have a roof over your head.
With like thousands of rules, and you can't do
it. Yes, of course, yes. I mean, it's not ideal, but the point is this. So let's just go back to the crime and necessity, right? Mm-hmm. So why do people commit crimes?
I'm not saying why all people commit crimes. I'm saying there are people who commit crimes because they have no other choice.
Got it. So why is it that other people that are as poor as they are in separate racial groups don't commit crimes at the same rates? For example, blacks are 13% of the population, and they commit over 50% of the crimes. Why is that?
Black people, I would say, not blacks.
Okay,
but
it's not. I could say whites, and you wouldn't care. So
anyway,
hold on. Right? I can say Hispanics, you wouldn't care. So don't police my language.
But whatever. I'm not policing your language. I'm just saying I would say black
Fair
people.
enough. But the insinuation is that I'm being racist. But that's fine.
Okay, that's your opinion.
Yeah, but black Americans are 13% of the population and commit anywhere between 50 to 56% of murders, crimes, carjackings. Why is that?
Well, what percentage of the white population is living in the same level of poverty?
Got it. So there's twice as many white Americans in poverty as black Americans. Not the same percentage, but still, if you look at white Americans in poverty...
The answer is culture. It's culture. There is an allowance, an acceptance, a normalization within certain subsects of people that makes it okay to get away with bad behavior. Simple as that. So it's not to say racial inferiority. Oh, black people are just more violent. Black people are just more. No, it's not that. It's culture. And when we don't look at that, and when we make excuses for it, and when we want to point the finger everywhere else, she thinks she's helping black folk by evading that point. She thinks that's the racist part, when the true racist is the individual who doesn't want to acknowledge the true problem to actually be a remedy to the problem. How do we change the culture? Again, There are people who live in poverty. Like I can go to Africa per se. There are spaces where people are committing heinous crimes in poverty, and those who won't even do it. Right? I can go over in certain places in Europe. Let's say where there's Muslim communities. You may have an impoverished area, but they're committing less crimes per capita because of their religious cultural upbringing and their religious background and what they value and the types of guardrails they have around their communities. What we used to have in the quote unquote black community before the 1960s was a self-policing when it came to these incidents. There was a level of accountability in the neighborhood. You couldn't just run around and do whatever. You would be publicly shamed. We have gotten rid of shame. Bring shame back. Make shame great again.
In poverty, they commit far less crimes than black Americans in poverty. Why is that?
Maybe it's because when you're in a store, like they follow black people and they don't follow white people.
What about murder?
Rural?
No, but why is it that, like, just saying murder, why is it that black people...
When you're in a store, like they follow black people and they don't follow white people.
What about murder?
Rural?
No, but why is it that, like, just saying murder, why is it that black people commit so many more murders? Like, that's not, you're being followed in a store and you commit more murders?
Yeah.
You're making the rule, or I'll get to you in a sec, but
Okay,
it's not,
anyway.
it's not a good argument. But let me just go back to one thing you said. Systemic
Whatever, you're
racism,
good.
right? So the idea of systemic is that it's within our laws.
Mm-hmm.
There are some black Americans here listening. What can you as a white American do that the black American cannot do?
Let's see. I could go into a store and not get followed. The police could not track me down on when I'm driving. I'm less likely to get shot and killed while I'm driving. There's a lot of things that I can do.
Okay, so just be clear. So if you walk into a local CVS here, how would you guys be treated differently?
Well, they would probably say hello, and they would probably just walk, let me in and not follow me, and then.
So
Oh my God, this is the power of media propaganda, dude. My God. This is a brain unwashed. It's almost sad that she's that far gone. She has this trope in her head of a world that, again, everybody has their own personal experiences, and there's some people who view their entire life through the lens of racism. And so that's going to be their worldview, right? Somebody crosses the street, it was racism. Somebody, looks at them, it's racism. Somebody doesn't look at them, it's racism. Everything is seen through that lens. It's, confirmation bias. But I would say most honest people would say, you know what? Most of my day-to-day living is not an exercise of me being followed around by police, followed around in stores. Lord have mercy. This man, you got more patience than I do, brother. You really do.
A lot of probablys. I don't believe you, but I'm talking about laws, right? So what in the legal code of America can you as a white individual do that the black individual can't? Because systemic means it's in our code, right? It's for example, like Jim Crow, totally get it. That's systemic racism. What is systemically your advantage?
Maybe housing codes, because I know redlining isn't a thing anymore, but there is, isn't there people who are white are more likely to be given loans because of, they have less, I don't know, that's just it's back from redlining. It's a lot of the same stuff.
So, I don't...
She sounds like an incomplete Wikipedia search, is what she sounds like. Like she just read enough to say the words, but not actually know what the words even mean. This is really sad. And unfortunately, this is the byproduct of many of these so-called educational institutions or even higher education institutions, aka scams, as Charlie would say.
I don't buy into any of that. So I just kind of go...
You don't buy into redlining, or you don't buy
into redlining. I don't buy any of that stuff that happens today. In fact, it's the opposite. Loans are now given favorably to black Americans in certain cities over white Americans.
Okay, but let's...
So we
think
because
redlining...
I believe in... I know redlining existed. I don't debate that. Of course I have. But because of DEI and because of affirmative action, there's actually a preference given. But so let's go back to fathers, right?
Okay, let's go back to fathers.
So something happened to black America since 1965. So in 1965... So...
You mean the war on drugs?
Right. Well, so if that's your contention, that's fine. So in order to go to jail for the war on drugs, you have to be dealing drugs, right? Or you have to be caught with drugs. So if you don't
which is one of like the main jobs that you can have in a like poverty-stricken. Like if there's no job,
That's highly offensive. That is highly offensive. It is one of, she's basically saying, well, black people have no choice but to be drug dealers. What do y'all think about that? How many of y'all, your only option was to sell dope? Somebody in the comments, let me know right now. Your only option was to sell. And I'm not gonna lie, I had a period of time in my life where I was selling. I was a street pharmacist for a little bit. Terrible decision making. Did I have to do that? Absolutely not. But I'm curious, how many of y'all were forced? Your hand was forced into these streets.
like you're going to do drugs. I mean, you're going to trade drugs
no,
because that's the only option you have.
It's such a difference in worldview. You're making excuses for criminals.
Yeah,
and what an insult to poor immigrants that came to this country that didn't commit crimes and worked 2 or 3 jobs and worked themselves out of poverty and didn't decide to go deal coke.
Well, my father is a white immigrant from Poland, and he committed crimes, and he's fine now. So
did he go to jail?
Yeah, he did.
I thought there was systemic racism. I thought that doesn't happen very much.
I never said white people don't go to jail. I said they go more, and you're saying that white immigrants are fine and they don't.
No,
I'm
that's
saying
far
that they
less
do.
actually. I'm glad he went to jail if he committed a crime. I think it's terrible.
Yeah.
So,
well,
but at the core of it, we have a difference in worldview, right? My worldview is I'm not sympathetic to people that steal, that loot, and murder, because that's a values problem, and I don't like making excuses for people that do things that are obviously destructive. Secondly, we have a problem in Black America. The biggest problem is not racism, it's the lack of dads. If dads are around, kids flourish. And you know who agreed with me? Barack Obama. Barack Obama used to make this a central piece of his campaign. He came to this campus back in 2012, drew like a 100,000 person crowd, and talked about how we need to rebuild the black family and put dads back. Why doesn't the Democrat Party talk about that anymore?
I'm fine with having fathers. I'm not against having black dads.
For sure. I'm saying, but don't we agree? Has anyone heard that mentioned on the national scale in the last 10 years? Yeah, I mean, we've heard about
Probably
like
not.
Yeah, and
Because
why
there's
is that?
bigger issues.
No, there isn't. See, that's the issue, is that this is what makes us different. As a conservative, I focus on if you have family breakdown, don't worry about climate change, don't worry about systemic racism. All that stuff is like these crazy abstractions.
What do you think create family problems? Systemic racism creates family problems. If you take away black people from their families, then they're going to have broken families.
Okay, so, but that's interesting. How are you taking them away? Aren't they leaving? They're not staying with the women they're impregnating. So, for example, there are 13% of the population is black. Not every single person ends up in jail, obviously. And yet there's huge child abandonment because there's a cultural expectation that is different in Black America than in white America, which is it's okay to impregnate a woman and abandon her in Black America.
And unfortunately, it's becoming the norm with damn near everybody. The feminist manifesto. You don't need no man. I remember seeing a video in the 80s of these black women sitting around and they were already talking about, we don't need no man. And then I'm like, it's been 20 years. Y'all grandmothers hearing y'all speak right now, your mothers hearing y'all speak would be, I don't think just offended. They would be heartbroken. And yet now, 70%? Heartbreaking, man.
It's not
based on what? What is that based on?
That's a good question. Where does it come from? It's just based on...
No, I'm saying what is that, like, your view of Black America?
Well, it's not a view. It's true. I mean, don't take my word for it. Look at Thomas Sowell and Shelby Steele that have done amazing analysis on this. It's that in black culture, that is not considered to be a stigma. In white upper middle class culture, for those of you that grew up in Waukesha or Libertyville or grew up in Hinsdale or grew up in Naperville, you guys all know those neighborhoods. If you impregnate a girl, a woman, and you just like abandon her, that's frowned upon. That is a social stigma in upper middle class white culture.
And it's not in black culture?
No. In fact, it's glorified by the rap culture.
He dropped a bar at the end there. Baby mama and baby daddy culture is praised in hip hop or quote unquote rap culture, which is a degenerate culture. And I am ashamed I was ever a part of it and ever indulged in it. But unfortunately, it is propped up, it is promoted, it is hailed as something that we should aspire towards. So let me know what y'all think, what y'all wrap-up thoughts are on this. Because as far as I'm concerned, folks, it's time for everybody to start holding everybody accountable. Especially as Americans here, Who else is going to do it? Who else is going to do it? China's not going to come in. They would rather this place be destroyed from the inside out. Russia's not going to come do it. None of these other countries we've been trying to give so-called aid to for so long are going to do it. It has to be from the inside out. And the people who love you are going to tell you the truth, even if it means offending you. Even if it means hurting your little old feelings in the moment, they're going to tell you the truth that's going to set you free. And that's all I'm here for. So appreciate you guys for tapping in. Till the next time, peace.
I used to be afraid of the dark, a place unknown like a heart in their heart. I used to see my life in the bar. Now the kids unchained, every shackle is lost. 2 steps in the moonlight, 2 step in the daytime. You just know when it feel right. You got a feeling the time's not. See you through those shades that I just threw on. Through my lenses, you just can't do no wrong. I fell in love with myself again. I fell in love with myself. I fell in love with the sunshine. I fell in love with the light. I fell in love with the full moon. I fell in love with the night. I can see the light again. I can see the light. You can see the life in him illuminate the night. I know the time is taking. A 365, that's a